And hello, everybody. This is Sean Palmer, and Seth Kamens is over there. But I'm still hearing lots of feedback from Seth, so I'm not sure what that is. But
I don't hear anything.
All right. Well, today is our 75th NBA basketball show, I guess. And then we'll talk a little bit about baseball. I got to tell you, this was harder than it looked.
This is brutal.
I had a really hard time towards the end who I was knocking out and who I wasn't. And then I did not look at the 75th that the NBA produced on purpose, because let me go through it and figure out who I had. And then I did compare later and say, oops, I forgot that guy. And there was one or two that I definitely forgot. And surprisingly, the two that I forgot the most, one was Willis Reed, which is shocking. And I forgot Jerry West.
You forgot Jerry West?
I don't know how I got there. I did. I forgot Jerry West.
So add Jerry West and take someone out. Come on.
Oh, no, I did. Well, that's what I said. I did my list. And this is why you do them with other people, right? It's not one person's list. Yeah. It's a bunch of people's lists. But it was really hard towards the end where I got to 80 names. And I was like, all right, I got to cut out 5. And I will tell you, there are ones on the list, the NBA's list, that I certainly don't have.
I knocked about 8 to 10 off.
So I took 6 off, but those weren't even the last 3 that I took off. Like, they weren't even in the mix for the last 3. So is it the last 3? No, the last 4. So let's go through. Who did you knock off last? I think that's kind of important, right? And then we can go into who you knocked off the 75th, and then we'll actually go into our choices. So I think probably 65 of them we probably have the same, right?
Likely.
So you are off camera right now. I see like half of your face.
There we go.
All right.
There were 2 or 3. I was going back and forth between a few. James Worthy.
So Worthy made my list. I will tell you some of the guys that did. One of the guys that did was Connie Hawkins. Like, I think I represented more of the 70s than I did anything else. And I went through it and look. That's what I was doing in the last couple of minutes, was doing a tally of by era. And granted, some of these guys like Willis Reed, you're kind of like, are they in the 60s or the 70s, right? They obviously span different decades. But the way I came down was I had, and I think my math works now, I have 12 from the aughts, the 2000 to 2010. And that includes guys like anybody in the LeBron James draft, right? Okay. Then I have 12 from there. I have 7 from 2010 to 2020. So I gave a lot less credence to guys that have played less than 10 years. And that may just be, hey, let's wait to the 100th where you've played 15 years.
Well, let me ask you, is Bill Walton on your list?
Bill Walton is not on my list.
Yeah, I took him off as well, which I went back and forth on because, I mean, really, he had 2 great years.
He wasn't even close on my list. He wasn't even in the top 80 or 85.
The problem is his two years were so good. But
they were, and there are guys that I definitely have in there, but they were 10 years, right? So I will tell you flat out, I don't have Damian Lillard on there at all. And because I'm just like, all right, when the 100 comes around, I'm sure he'll be on it. But he just hasn't done enough yet. And maybe that's just me saying I want a career, not a peak. And that's Bill Walton.
Yeah, right? Lillard's in my bottom 5.
Okay. So I got 12 from the aughts, 7 from the 10s, 7 from the 50s, which makes sense because I didn't see the 50s. So, right, I have 13 from the 60s. And I have 13 from the 70s. And I didn't see the 60s or the 70s.
Weren't that good. So that's a little confusing.
And
there's I assume a lot of them are overlap though.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Some of them definitely overlap. Like George Girvin is probably overlap into the 80s as well.
Right.
I have 10 from the 80s and I have 13 from the 90s. So I think I'm like, aside from the 10s, which I just don't believe they've done enough, and here's the other thing. How much credit do you give for championships? I think the mythology comes into this a lot as to how you broke these guys down.
Look, it certainly has to be taken in consideration. You know, the guys I went back and forth on were.
Well, don't tell me the guys that you're in. Tell me the guys that you're. Let's go through the guys that are out.
Well, first of all, I will give you my list of the top 50 who didn't make my 75.
Wow, I don't have 50.
No, my list from the ESPN top 50 list.
Oh no, first. Okay, let's go that way. So go your first one. We'll go back and forth.
Tiny Archibald didn't make it.
Did not make mine as well. He is on my list.
Dave Bing did not make it. He probably was your number 75 because he's a Syracuse grad. Let's be honest.
I do have Bing in there.
I knew you would.
Okay, hold on. I don't have Ray Allen in there. I don't.
In your top 75?
I do not.
Wow.
Well, part of what I did with this, and maybe it was my way, is I did not enjoy. I don't enjoy one-trick ponies. I don't enjoy.
Is Reggie Miller on your list?
Reggie Miller is not on my list either.
Okay.
I don't like one. And maybe it's only I know Ray Allen averaged 23.7 points a game one year. Like, I know he was a dynamite scorer earlier in his career. But towards the end of his career, he's playing the third star on some of these teams, where he's basically just spotting up from three.
Right. But let's be fair here. He was the third star on a team that had two top 40 guys in Boston.
Agreed.
And he was the number 3 guy or number 4 guy in Miami with two people who made my top 30. Bosch is on the kind of the precipice.
Bosch is one of those guys that didn't make it. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't make mine either.
Who else do you have that's on the top 75 that is not on your list?
Okay.
Give me one more.
Going through the list here. Did Hal Greer make it? I forget if I put him on at the end. Yes, I did. Okay. I looked at the case. Sam Jones didn't make it.
Okay, I have Sam Jones on mine. I do not have Anthony Davis at all. I think Anthony Davis gets a lot more credit for his one championship being with LeBron. And if he didn't have that championship, would he be on anybody's list? And I don't think he would be.
Well, I think you compare him to Kevin Love and you compare him to Blake Griffin.
Both of which you don't.
Neither of them are on my list, but would they be in the 10 behind it? Maybe. I think he's better. His career is better than both of them. I have him around 65. He's on mine. I have him around 65, I think.
Okay. I also do not have Lillard, which I believe you probably do.
Well, I'm a Portland guy, so yeah, I do.
I know, but I have Drexler.
You kind of have to have Drexler. I mean, it's
okay. I don't have Pete Maravich.
Number 74.
Okay. I mean, I definitely do not. And a lot of this, again, I went and looked at peak versus maybe longevity when you get into a 75 is more important to me when you're talking.
Could be. Maravich, to me, revolutionized the game. And so that's kind of where I played him in. I think the surprise that I don't have Robert Parrish on my list.
Okay, I do. And he was one of the very final people on that list. And I don't have Reggie Miller. And for the same reason. And I actually think Allen was a better player than Miller. So if I'm picking one of the two, I'm picking Reggie Allen. Oh, sorry. I'm picking Ray Allen. If I'm picking.
But your argument, though, that and the Bate Isles, if you see on the side, is commenting.
Of course.
Maravich, I agree, would have been a superstar in the NBA today. He was Steve Nash.
He would, but
he didn't play.
He didn't play in the NBA today.
So
Larry Bird would have scored 40 points a game in today's NBA because he would just sit at the 3-point line the entire time.
Okay, let's see what else I got here.
So, all right.
I don't think Wes Unseld made it for me.
Oh, okay.
Nope. No West unsold.
So I will tell you, like I said, I think I went more in the 70s than I did, maybe than I should have. But
It's not right or wrong. It's subjective.
But I viewed the big man of the 70s, I think, was underrepresented in the. I think big men in general were underrepresented.
So you have both McAdoo. Do you have both McAdoo and Lanier in here?
I do.
Okay, I have McAdoo. Lanier is one of my last 5.
And I got more. I got Artis Gilmore in there. I think Artis Gilmore was a big snub. I have Dwight Howard in here, who I thought.
So Dwight Howard. I don't understand how Dwight Howard didn't make it. Dwight Howard.
I believe that the big men were underrepresented.
That's possible. Dwight Howard to me was a no-brainer on here. I mean, nobody particularly likes Dwight Howard, but he belongs on this list.
I also have Spencer Hayward in there, and like I said, maybe I looked at Artis Gilmore when this all came out, and I was like, how does he not make it? And then I was like, wait a second. Looking at it, there are a ton. The way the game has gone to the swingman, to the 2-3, and granted, the game has totally changed. I think shows up in that there are many more swing guys than there are big men. And when you look at the 70s were dominated by big men.
Yeah. Bill Sharman was actually my last cut.
Okay. So my last cut was. I didn't have a last. I also have Alex English in there, which I know you don't have.
Number 75, just for you, baby.
Yes.
And very funny. I'll be on Gary A's show as I am every Thursday at 11:20.
Right.
And Dave, who runs the show, texted me. We're going to do our top 75. He goes, "Do you have Anthony? Do you have Alex English?" Like number 75, smiley. So that one's for you.
Well, Gary
he's right there.
Gary and I also talked about this last week where I was talking about Gilmore. And I was saying, how does a guy first of all, I don't believe the ABA stats were counted as much as NBA stats.
No, you don't see Dan Issel in here. You don't see Louis Dampier in here.
Well, I'll tell you, the 3 guys that were the last 3 guys for me all played in the ABA. And I think that
Mel Daniels.
So I have Mel Daniels, I have Dan Issel, and I have Connie Hawkins. And all 3, I think if you look at the stats that they put up, warrant consideration. But unfortunately, and Hayward, by the way, Connie Hawkins was my last guy.
Hawkins is a hard because he really only had 4 or 5 really great years, and then drugs just devoured him.
So so Hawkins was my last cut, and Hayward was my last in. And I put the 2 of them next to each other, and I said, all right, how do we deal with this, right? And Hayward had just a better career looking at it overall. But Issel and Mel Daniels should get consideration. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I don't like the fact that Klay Thompson was 77 or 76. Again, I don't think these guys –
I know Klay Thompson was – I didn't consider Klay Thompson.
Have enough in their bag. I just don't think that when you play –
Melo on your team? Did Melo make it?
Melo made it. I think you have a hard – when you're in the top 10 scoring of all time, I kind of have you'd have to have a very hard argument to me to not be in the top 75 players of all time when you're a top 10 all-time scorer. I mean, I just don't see where else he would go. But this was harder than I thought it was going to be.
This is brutal.
You have Dominique in there?
Oh, yeah. Dominique was in my top 50. Or you actually know he was 51. I'm sorry. He was 51.
Well, right. I mean, it's brutal because did you have Chris Bosh in there?
No.
But Bosh was in the 4 that I cut out last. And my math was wrong. Like I had Earl Monroe twice. And I was like, okay, that made that easier. I just cut out 1. And then I was like, but then I went to see Jerry West, and I was like, damn it, I forgot West. Like, how do you forget Jerry West?
Yeah, he's the number 2 shooting guard of all time. So
And Mutombo also made it for me. And another guy I couldn't believe. Yeah, I know. Well, do you have him in yours?
No.
I had a hard, like, I couldn't understand how the best defensive player of the 90s doesn't make it. And he wasn't Mark Eaton. Like,
no, I mean, look, I think it's arguable. Look, this is hard. Yeah. Alonzo Mourning was a really hard call for me.
I didn't have Mourning in because I didn't think Mourning played enough. Again, these guys,
but here's the funny part. Would you rather have Alonzo Mourning or Carmelo Anthony?
Who else is on my team? No, I'm saying it does matter, though, right? It does matter who else is on your team. Your hand is right in front of your face. It does matter who else is on the team. If
you're starting a team from scratch, who would you rather have?
At his peak, I'd want Mourning.
Yeah, me too. But
Mourning's peak
Mourning was the second best center in basketball for 4 or 5 years.
Look, but I'd want Bill Walton too, right?
Yeah. But Bill Walton only had 2 years of peak.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
Mourning was more than that.
Okay, but I'd want Kevin Love too at his peak. Kevin Love at his peak averaged 25 points and 10 boards.
Yeah, but then you just said you don't want Anthony Davis, and he did the same thing for the last 10 years.
He has not played 10 years.
He's played 8 years.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not viewing this as a peak. I'm looking at this as a career. You went to which one would I want if I was starting a team?
No, I have Melo. I don't have I don't have more.
How did you go about with your analysis? What did you take into account?
I went back and forth. I have guys like, I have guys that I think I probably overrated because they were in the 60s and it's harder for me to gauge, like a Jerry Lucas.
Yep.
I do have Damian Lillard because I have Damian Lillard. I have one or two in there that will surprise. I have one that I think will shock you.
Okay, who's that?
Sidney Moncrieff.
Oh, yeah. That's a shock. Again, probably not long enough for me. Because I believe he only played 8 or 9 healthy years.
He was.
Oh, he was the second best shooting guard in for his time.
In the 80s. He was the best combo guard. That team was phenomenal. They just couldn't beat the Celtics in the late 80s and the Sixers in the early 80s. They couldn't get past, and that team was really good.
So for those that are unaware of Sidney Moncrieff's stats, let's just put it in here. He's 5-time All-Star. Between 81 and I'm just getting the stats. Between 81 and 86, he averaged 21 points, approximately 6 rebounds, and approximately 5 assists.
And he was an all-defensive player.
No doubt. But he had a 5-year peak, right? Those other years, he averaged 11 and 10, and then at the beginning of his career, he averaged 8 and 14.
Yeah, he had a hard fall. He had a knee injury that just killed him.
He lasted.
I think he is someone who has fallen by the wayside undeservedly, and maybe that's why I brought him in. Again, I'm not saying that's the right answer.
No.
So you're right.
That definitely does surprise me. It's not something that's indefensible whatsoever. I mean, like I said, he was the second best shooting guard at the time. You know who I don't have? I don't have Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, come on.
It makes no sense. No. I just said which makes no sense. Yeah. So I got to dump somebody else.
Two of my top 10 guards of all time. You forgot.
So I got to dump somebody in here. I do not have Dumars either.
I don't
believe Dumars is worth it.
Is Rodman?
I have Rodman.
Rodman I played with back and forth. And
Rodman is hard for me because it goes against the one-trick pony. But Rodman was also an all-defensive player for how many years?
10 years. Yeah, I have no issue with Rodman.
All right, I'm taking off Parrish. That's my guy that I'm taking off. And I'm putting Isaiah.
Right, why don't we start? It makes
it easier because they're both in the 80s.
Also, did not include, just from the top 50 list, I'm looking. Lenny Wilkens didn't make it. Nate Thurman didn't make it.
All right, so LeBron. I'm just going by year right here. So we're in the aughts. LeBron is a yes, right? I mean, I know
He's my number 2.
Wait. Oh, I didn't rank him.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I ranked them, which is why it was so difficult.
LeBron, Wade, Dirk, Melo, Garnett, Pierce, Duncan, Iverson, Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd.
Okay, I'll give you I'll give you the numbers that I ranked them.
Okay.
Read them again.
LeBron,
number 2.
Wade.
Hold, bear with me. I'm just highlighting so I can kind of follow. Wade, 25.
Dirk,
16.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, I may be off on the era. Like, some of these guys are definitely spanning different decades. This is just the aughts. I got Melo. Yeah, I had him in the 60s, I would think.
69.
Garnett.
How old are you? 12? 20. Garnett.
Pierce.
46.
Duncan.
8.
Iverson.
35.
35. Chris Paul.
41.
Dwight Howard.
65.
Nash.
36.
And Kidd.
31.
So, all right, taking a look at your rankings. I'm a little surprised you have Kidd over Iverson. A little bit. Like, Kidd to me, when he's the one that's changed his game more than any other player.
Yes, he did.
Seen, right? But he was a dominant player at the start and definitely not a dominant player at the end.
Well, he was also not a dominant player at the end because he played for 20 seasons.
Sure.
I mean, he played from 93 to, I mean, he won his title in 11 or 10, 11, whatever it was.
That's fair.
So, look, the choosing between Stockton, Isaiah, Kidd, Paul, Peyton, flip a freaking coin. They all have their pros and cons.
And I think Peyton gets undervalued, incredibly undervalued as an NBA player. Probably because he didn't win a championship.
He did win a title.
Well, he won a championship sitting his ass on the bench.
He won game 3 for them, if I remember, in 06.
Right. But he won the same way.
Other than Isaiah, none of these guys were in their prime.
Right. But
or they didn't win a title.
Well, Kidd won a title, right?
Not in his prime.
Oh, not in his prime. But you have when you look at the other guys that are on that list, except for Chris Paul, well, I guess Chris Paul can now be on that list. Most of them made at least 2 championship series. At least. And Peyton won a championship the same way LaShawn McCoy won a championship. I mean,
he was a little bit more. He did a little bit more than LaShawn McCoy.
I know, but the point is the same. All right. So, but yeah, I think so. You have Gary Payton as So
Gary Payton's 38 for me.
We're now in the 10s. So this means that these guys have had a short span, right? They had to dominate in their short span, less than 10 years. Curry.
Okay. Start.
Curry.
15.
That's high for me. That's
where do you put him at this point?
I don't know. I don't know.
When I did the list, I took a lot of this from the list in 15 that I did a couple months ago from the top 50.
Right.
He's pretty much the number 3 point guard of all time. Maybe number 2. Where else? He revolutionized the game. He's the best player on a team that won 3 titles. Fine, Durant is right there too.
No, I wasn't going there. I was going. He had a lot more help than anybody else that I could think of.
Not the first team. I mean, Clay was really good. Thompson is very good, but he doesn't have any automatic Hall of Famers on that team.
True. Okay, Durant.
13.
Harden.
37.
By the way, I hated putting Harden on here. Oh, I have Curry twice. Woohoo!
Fantastic.
I can add another person. Okay, now here's the guy that I had the hardest time with, and I know again revolutionized the game is Westbrook. I had a really hard time putting Westbrook on this list.
I have him at 54. I don't really know what to do with him either. I'll be honest.
Because to me, he's not
a stat accumulator.
He's not a one-trick pony, at all, right? But he is a me-first player that has always been a me-first player, and that's the way he has accumulated stats. It's like the ball hog on the court. Of course, the ball hog. It's like Jordan when he scored 63, right? When they were playing against the Cavs before he started winning.
No, that was 63 was against the Celtics in 86.
Right, I know.
The greatest team of all time. Yeah.
But my point is, it's when Jordan was playing with reckless abandon, not as a team player, and other teams said, sure, Michael, go get yours. We'll just stop everybody else. Yep. And they never won. And that's the way – look, Westbrook could totally change the way people see him this year. So far, he hasn't done it. But – they could
totally, 4 games in.
I know, but I'm saying he could totally. But if you've watched any of those games, I don't know if you have. When LeBron is on the court and Anthony Davis on the court, Westbrook just stands there, and that's not gonna win championships with those three. We thought that the fit was bad to begin with. If you're just standing there and not setting picks and not moving around,
yeah, that's pointless. For Westbrook to be a spot up shooter. They should have traded for Buddy Hield, which they
exactly
should have done anyway.
Okay, and so we got 2 more from the 10s. We have Giannis, who again, I kind of say, is it too soon? In the same way that I do Anthony Davis, but
I have Giannis at 29. Jesus, man, he won 2 MVPs and he was that Finals MVP was.
Oh, that's what I was saying. I questioned it. I didn't say I still have him, and then you have Kawhi. Who I don't know where to put Kawhi.
I put him at 44.
Okay. All right. Yeah, exactly. You throw up your hands. Okay, the 50s, right? Mike and these guys, none of us saw them, right? I mean, neither one of us saw these guys. Nope. I will, as I said to Gary last week, you know why you put Hal Greer on this list? Because when you were growing up, all you knew was Hal Greer was in the top 10 of points.
Yep.
And his name has just been there forever, right? So, of course, he's in the top 75 because for the 30 years that we were growing up, he was in the top 10. So That's why he's there. All right. Mike and
I have it 33.
Dolph Shays.
43.
Paul Arizin.
59.
And another guy who we just hear about. We don't know. Dave Bing, you don't have. I understand. Bob Cousy.
40.
Another guy we see very limited.
Right, but Cousy we understand. Cousy was the first real point guard in the NBA.
Right, but I'm saying we see limited footage of any of
them. Yeah, because it didn't exist.
Right, exactly. You don't have Sam Jones. Bill Sharman.
He was my last cut.
Last cut. Okay. All right. We're in the 60s. Bill Russell.
Number 3.
Wilt.
Number 7.
Big O.
Number 12.
I am very eager to hear your ranking on this guy. Elgin Baylor, who I think is underappreciated.
You'll be good with mine. 14.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
That's acceptable. 2 behind the Big O. Because you look at Elgin's stats.
Yeah.
Elgin was off the charts stat-wise. And granted,
they played a power forward as like a 6'6" guy. I mean, again, look, if he ever beat the Celtics, which he never did, they beat him after he retired. The year he retired,
right? He
probably is 2 or 3 spaces further up.
Yeah. Hal Greer.
63.
And I don't know if he's in the 50s or the 60s either. I put him in the 60s.
He's in the 60s. He's in the 60s.
Okay, Bob Pettit. Another guy like Hal Greer. He's always been there, so you're going to leave him in.
22.
You know a lot more about Bob Pettit than I do.
Dude, he scored 50 in a game 7 against the Celtics in the 57 finals. He's one of two. Him and Chamberlain are the only two people to beat Russell in the championship series.
Okay. Connie Hawkins, you don't have him in.
No, he's in the 50s. He's in the 60s and 70s anyway.
Spencer Hayward, you don't have him in.
No.
Earl the Pearl.
49.
Dave DeBuscher.
42.
And DeBuscher's one of those guys that I went back and forth on.
DeBuscher seems to be the guy.
He's the glue guy.
He's the guy. He's the ultimate glue guy who everyone has said was much, much, much more valuable than his statistics ever showed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
who's a guy like that today? I mean, I like doing these comparisons, right? Like who is that today?
Draymond?
Yeah. Yeah. Because Draymond will never make one of these lists.
No, probably not.
And DeBuscher gets a lot more credit probably because he was in New York.
Probably. He was the third best player on one championship team, put the second best on another.
Is Bill Bradley anywhere close to this list?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Walt Frazier, speaking of Knicks.
32.
Okay. Jerry Lucas, who, again, none of us saw.
52.
You don't have Lenny Wilkins.
Nope.
And then Jerry West.
9.
What gets West at 9 and Baylor at 14? I know I'm parsing. I'm just asking. What gets West at 9?
West was the greatest playoff player of his generation. He also he did end up winning a title. I think it's also positionally, he's the number 2 shooting guard of all time to me.
Okay. So where the person ranks on the specific position.
I'm not saying it specifically does where you're going. But to me, him and Robertson were the second and third best players of their era.
Yes.
Behind Russell. I guess in fourth behind Russell and Chamberlain.
Yeah.
So Baylor, for no specific reason, I think West was a better. If I remember, West was a better defensive player also.
Okay.
Baylor was a better rebounder. They're both phenomenal scorers. West
Look,
was also
parsing 14 and 9. I get that.
Yeah, West was also the leader of the team, and that does play a part.
Fair enough. Rick Barry, who again another guy I think gets undervalued.
Well, because he was hated. 27.
Yeah. Well, for whatever reason, right? Oscar Robertson wasn't incredibly liked.
No.
Okay. We're in the 70s now with Rick Barry. Do you have Gilmore on your list?
I do not.
Do you have Bob Lanier on your list?
I do not. He was a last-minute cut.
Kareem. I know you have Kareem on your list.
4.
Elvin Hayes.
68.
So what differentiates Elvin Hayes from Wes Unseld? Given that Unseld won an MVP, I don't think Hayes ever did.
Actually, Hayes did.
They both did?
He did win. He won one championship in 79 with the Bullets.
As did Unseld, right? Same championship.
Yeah, same. No. Unsold won it in 75, or 74, 75.
I thought it was the same championship.
It's again. This is the Melo argument. Hayes and Melo are to me the most comparable group he got. It's the one-trick pony who was really, really good at the one trick. I mean, Hayes was a scorer and had a little bit of rebounding. Unseld, better leader.
Unseld was a phenomenal rebounder.
Great rebounder, not great really at anything else. Decent scorer. Again, he would have been between 75 and 80.
Okay. All right. So no Gilmore. Hondo.
Who?
Havlicek.
Oh, Havlicek.
I
21.
have him in as Hondo. I think Hondo gets overrated.
I don't think so.
No?
Second best player on maybe 4 championships, best player on 3. It was the most points in the history of the Celtics before Bird and Pierce. Top 5 scoring when he retired. Played 16 positions. He was the Iron Man. I think he's right there.
Okay. George Girvin.
60.
Bob McAdoo, who I like to put the two of these guys together because I think they very much did the same thing.
58. McAdoo and Lanier?
Oh, McAdoo and Girvin.
Oh, no, McAdoo was a big man. Girvin was a 2.
I meant that in the same era, they both scored like crazy. McAdoo was a better rebounder, but they were right up there. McGinnis.
No, not even close.
No?
No. McGinnis was an empty scorer. Nothing.
Okay. I don't know why I have McGinnis in here. I don't remember.
He's on your list?
Yeah, I don't remember putting him in.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember putting him in. Nate Thurmond.
No.
Okay. I have Unseld. You do not have Unseld. Billy Cunningham.
62.
Willis Reed.
55.
Dr. J. Now we're into the 80s.
17.
Okay, so tell me something. Why does Dr. J get more credit for the ABA stats than anybody else?
Because he was the best player in the history of the ABA.
Okay, but my point is, why do they credit him for ABA stats and they don't credit a Gilmore for ABA stats? And maybe it's because Dr. J did more when he left the ABA.
He did, number one. Number 2, Dr. J we talk about guys who revolutionized the sport. Dr. J was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan, except he could rebound better.
Sure.
And by the time he got to the NBA, he was great, but his knees were not what they were. So he was an all-time – Girvin never won an ABA title. I don't think – maybe he won in 75.
But Gilmore –
he never won an NBA title, never went to an NBA finals.
No, I wasn't comparing Girvin. I was comparing Gilmore.
Sorry, Gilmore never won an NBA final, never went to a finals.
Correct.
He was not a great – no one ever considered Gilmore a great center. He was a very good player. But he was not a dominant player in the NBA. See, we're not really taking ABA into account. We're using it, but
hold on. So in 1977, 1978, and granted, first of all, he averaged 18.8 points per game over the course of his career.
He's a very good player.
Hold on. In those 2 particular seasons, just those, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about wasn't a dominant player. Those 2 particular seasons, 77, 78, 78, 79, averaged 23.3 and 13 boards a game. That's pretty dominant with Chicago.
That is. And what was Chicago's record during those years?
I will look that up for you. Not so good. They 40 and 42 in one year. And 31 and 51 in another. So perhaps you're right. Empty stats, maybe. Russell Westbrook problem?
Well, but
Westbrook gets a lot of credit for the triple doubles, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but we all know what the triple doubles could be. He hasn't won anything.
No, but he at least went to a finals.
Yeah. Not as the best player.
No. But he's been to the conference finals a couple times. He's been to the finals. I mean, look, it plays a part. And he did, regardless of whether they're empty or not, to average 10 assists, 10 rebounds a game is absurd.
I agree. Okay. Bird's what? 7 for you?
6.
I know. 6. I was close. Magic?
5.
Which makes sense. You have McHale in there?
Oh, yeah. 39.
I was going to say 42, but 39 is about right. Isaiah?
24.
Guy that I think gets completely undersold, Moses Malone.
18.
You did not undersell him. Well done.
I did not.
Barkley, who I think gets oversold.
26.
Worthy.
Didn't make it.
Dominique.
51. Welcome to the team, Dominique.
How does Neek make it over Worthy for you? Explain.
Worthy,
because we talked about championships, right?
We do.
So championships add something. Do they add 5 points? Add 5 points to your average? I don't know. But
Worthy, we talked about that actually on Gary's show. Worthy was the third option at best on a team that had two of the top 5 players of all time, in my mind. Yep. Kareem is 4 and Magic's 5. Nobody really. Dominique was the number 1 on a team that in any other era would have at a minimum made a conference finals.
Yes.
And they couldn't get past the Celtics.
But that's a what-if scenario. That's not a...
It's a practical scenario. The late 80s is the most difficult Eastern Conference ever. I don't know between the Sixers, the 80s are the Sixers, the Bucks, the Pistons, the Bulls, the Celtics. It's a brutal conference. And Dominique did not have any help at not only at his tier, but at a tier below that. So pretty much the best guy he had was either Doc Rivers or Kevin Willis.
That's what I was going to ask. Well, Kevin Willis.
Nice player, but I mean, was a 2-time All-Star.
All right, so let's take the year that Dominique led the league in scoring, okay? So that was 85-86. They finished second. They lost to – who did they lose to? They lost to the Celtics. The best player on his team other than him was Kevin Willis. You're absolutely right. Kevin Willis that year, 12 points a game, 9 rebounds. Yep. Nice player. You're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. You're right. Neek was, when they call him the human highlight reel, he was. I mean, no doubt. But his shooting percentage was 46.
Well, the 46 for a 3 is not horrendous. For a 5, that's horrendous. But for a 3 who's taking every difficult shot known to man, I don't have a huge problem with it.
And I will tell you, I did not realize he averaged 7 rebounds a game, which is pretty good for a guy of his size. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I still don't understand how Neek makes it all the way to 51 and Worthy doesn't make it up through 75. Because Worthy had stats just as good.
No, he didn't.
Not the scoring-wise, but all right, hold on.
Because nobody paid attention to Worthy. Look, I loved James Worthy. I was a Laker guy in the 80s. Because you had to choose the Lakers or the Celtics. You had to choose one of the two. I was a Laker guy.
I was a Laker guy, too. You know why? Because we're both from New York.
You can't root for Boston.
That's right.
He fit the Lakers perfectly.
He did.
But he wasn't a great defender. He wasn't a great rebounder. His reputation was built on Game 7 of the 88 finals when he scored like 35.
He also made the All-Star game 6 times in his 12 years.
Yeah, because they were the best team in the league, and the West stunk.
Fair.
I mean, look at the teams in the West.
Him and Tom Chambers, baby. Him and Tom Chambers.
Tom Chambers won an All-Star MVP.
He did. Okay. We only got 15 minutes, so let's keep going. Jordan is number 2, 3? 1. Karl Malone. I know you don't like Karl Malone.
30.
Kobe.
11.
And Shaq.
19.
Let me ask you this. Why and we went through Wilt, right? And you have Wilt at where? 7. What makes Wilt 7 and Shaq 19? Because to me, Wilt was a man amongst boys. There was even Russell was small, right? Russell was just better at being agile to guard him.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a man. There was nobody his size. No, so sort of like George Mikan, akin to Mikan, where Mikan dominated the sport because there was nobody that could match up against him. I view Wilt the same way. How does Shaq, where there were people that could match up against him and put up not the
Who matched up against Shaq? Dikembe? Olajuwon in the beginning.
Olajuwon, Robinson,
2 or 3. Robinson was. Shaq falls to me for a couple reasons. Number one, people purposely fouled the guy at the end of the game so he could shoot free throws.
Yes.
It's bad. Will was not a great free throw shooter, any stretch. But how high can you rate someone that they purposely tried to have shoot the ball?
Hold on a second. You don't think they did the same thing with Wilt? Wilt shot like 50% from the free throw line.
Wilt also led the league in assists one year. Wilt could do anything. His averages are so absurd. And as great as Shaq was, look, Shaq was a great player who could have been greater, but it was having fun, and that's fine. But it's you want to compare it. Shaq never hit the peak of what he could have been.
All right, so hold on, George Mikan, who
come on.
No. I'm putting him in the same boat because my point is when you are that much bigger than everybody else, you're going to put up astronomical numbers. And Mikan was that much bigger than everybody else. The same way Chamberlain was that much bigger than everybody else. Who was guarding Chamberlain other than Russell?
Nate Thurman. There were about 3. Walt Bellamy. These
in
were
the
good
70s, not in the 60s when he put up those numbers.
Walt Bellamy, of course he was. Walt Bellamy got traded for Dave DeBusschere in the 60s. Why wouldn't he have been? He was 7 foot. He was a good player.
He was a good player.
Look at his stats. He's a good player.
I understand. And I'm sure he put up big numbers too because people couldn't guard him either.
Where would you have Wilt?
So
where
Bellamy,
would you have Shaq?
Hold on, Bellamy from 62 to 65, right? So before there were big men, averaged 25 points a game.
Yeah.
But that's my point. When you're bigger than everybody,
where would you rank, like, from the peanut gallery here? Where would you rank them? I did numbers.
I think Shaq has to go up. That's my point. I think Shaq has to go up.
Do you have Shaq in your top 10?
I haven't done the top 10, but probably.
Here's my top 10.
I think he and Wilt have to be closer together. That's where I'm basically coming from.
So I have Wilt as my number 3 center of all time. I have Shaq as my number 6.
Okay. Who's between them?
Olajuwon and Moses.
Okay.
And then after that, I don't think I have a center for about 20 players.
So, all right. So Drexler, 44. Number one.
Only in my heart, 43.
Okay. Ewing, 64.
47.
I love hearing you talk about Ewing. David Robinson,
28. I apologize. He was closer to Shaq than I remembered.
Robinson was dominant for like 3 years. I mean,
Robinson was a really, really, really good player.
Yeah. Stockton,
34.
You don't have Mutombo.
Nope.
So Rodman.
Nope.
Peyton.
I already did Peyton for you. 38.
Right, but he wasn't in this list yet.
Gotcha.
He did it, but he wasn't in the list. And Pippen.
23.
You know what? Pippen and DeBusschere are kind of the same, right? That's a
Pippen's a better version.
Agreed, but Pippen also didn't have as much help, right?
Yeah.
I mean, DeBusschere had a lot. DeBusschere had a lot more help. So who am I missing in your list?
Okay, Olajuwon is 10.
Wait, I have Olajuwon in here.
Okay, but you didn't mention him.
Maybe that's my guy. No, I have Akeem. Oh, I skipped over between Shaq and Drexler. I had Hakeem there, but I didn't.
Okay.
Okay.
48 was Bernard King.
Bernard King to me is another what if.
Fair.
It's I wish he could have stayed. He's Michael Ray Richardson. I mean, it's just a different what if. And he's Derrick Rose.
Yeah, he's a little bit longer than Derrick Rose, but I get your point. Ray Allen, 50. Reggie Miller, 53.
Can't get on with Reggie Miller.
Dave Cowens, 56.
Maybe that's what I was missing. Okay.
Anthony Davis, 57.
I'm trying to wrap my head around Anthony Davis.
It's hard. I'm not overwhelmed on it either.
So what's justified of Anthony Davis?
What?
I mean, what's justified of Anthony Davis? Anthony Davis,
27, 10, and 3 pretty much every year. Now, if you want to say they're empty stats, 25, 10, 22, 10.
I don't even think it's been that much, but okay. So Anthony Davis, I'm getting the stats up right now. Years. All right. So last year he averaged, where's the points?
Forget last year. Last year was the weirdest year ever.
No, you're right. So he's averaged over 23 points for the last 5 years. You're absolutely right.
Where is his rebounds?
He's averaged about 10, and he's averaged about 2. So, yeah, 25, 10, and 2. Yeah. I didn't think it was that good, but yes, I'll say they're empty stats, and I also say he hasn't played enough. 64. I mean, he's averaged probably 60 games over his career. A season.
Right. You're going to crush me on these last few.
Of course.
64, Tony Parker.
He was on my list, and I crossed him off but I thought Ginobili was actually better, and he was a last second bye-bye.
66, Pau Gasol.
No, I could see Pau, but
the last 20 are brutal. It's hard as hell to figure these out.
So Parker's better than Ginobili to you?
They're about the same.
Okay.
And but Parker played a harder position, to be perfectly honest.
Are you about to say Grant Hill? Oh, I can't. I can't see Grant Hill over Tracy McGrady, and I don't have McGrady on the list either.
I do.
Okay. Do you have Grant Hill over Tracy McGrady?
67 and 70.
Okay, so no big deal.
Then I have Lillard at 71. Vince at 72.
Vince was close. Yeah, I'm surprised you have Vince behind McGrady.
McGrady was a better player. I actually have no real. Carter was longer.
McGrady was complete empty stats for the majority of his career.
He had some bad breaks. That Houston team should have been really good.
Yeah.
Even that Orlando team should have been really good if Grant didn't get hurt 87 times.
Well, and Yao Ming didn't have a foot problem for the other 97 times. I mean, he might be the most heartbroken guy around. And then Steve Francis combusts on them.
Moncrieff, 73.
Right.
Maravich, 74. And Alex English, number 75.
Yes.
Look, the last from really 55 down is brutally tough.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I do a best. You can pick. I mean, if Nabate watches the rest of the show, he was commenting on it before. I'm sure he will come back and desecrate this thing.
Oh, there's no doubt. Look, this, as you said before, this is completely subjective, right? Because it is. I mean, the first 30 players are probably not subjective. They are.
No.
But
up to, I think my top 40 to 45.
But even in your top 40 to 45, I think you have guys from the 50s, right? You do. So my point is,
I have 3 guys from the 50s.
And you have Monroe at 49, you have DeBusschere at 42, and you have Frazier at 32, guys that you've never seen.
Yeah.
So my point is, what I'm saying is it's completely subjective past probably the top 20 to 30.
Yeah. And look, I have, if you want to put Peyton above Kidd, I have no real argument.
Exactly. Peyton, to me, is underappreciated because he was a jerk. He was an absolute jerk. But he was, and I remember playing fantasy basketball at the time, so it certainly helped. He was the most complete point guard there was for a long time. He was better than Kidd because he scored more than Kidd. He had more steals than Kidd. Kidd had more assists at the time. The only two guys that had more assists were Stockton and Kidd at the time. But Peyton did everything else. And Peyton was a phenomenal defensive player. Like that's where he cut his teeth, was on defense. Sean Kemp didn't make your team?
Only the all-father team.
That's what I said on the Gary show. I said him, Travis Henry, and Antonio Cromartie are the inaugural inductees. All right, so we got 5 minutes left. Is there a World Series going on, and is it in Atlanta? Because I don't think anybody cares.
You know what?
This is awful.
I'm glad it's not the Red Sox, and I'm glad it's not the Dodgers. And Charlie Morton pitching with a broken leg. Yeah, props.
That's big time props that he pitched with a broken leg. That goes like with Jack Youngblood, and you're surprised I remembered that, who played a Super Bowl with a broken leg. All right, we have a college basketball preview starting next week.
We do?
We have to. College basketball starts tonight. Syracuse plays against Pace in an exhibition game.
Who's favored?
Oh, stop it.
You lose your 14 games during the regular season anyway, and then you go to the tournament as an 11 seed, and you go to the 16 or the 8.
And I already got my reservations in New Orleans for the Final Four, so I'm good.
Now, if Aaron Wiggins didn't come back, I may be there with you, but what can you do?
One year, the stars will align, and both of our teams will be very good.
Not until our coaches are gone.
It may be after we both die.
Yeah,
it will happen. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. For Seth Kamens, that guy, I'm Sean Palmer. Seth and Sean Sports. We will talk to you next week. This was
Congrats, Curry Lloyd. Amazing career. Have a good one, Knicks.
See you guys. Have a good day.